I still remember the sound of fire. It wasn't the crackle you hear in fireplaces. It was angry, alive, devouring everything I loved. That night, the garage smelled of oil and steel, the way it always did. I was finishing a repair job when the explosion ripped through the air. I ran outside, and my world went red. My workshop was on fire. The small building I built with my hands, the same one where Lena used to wait for me with coffee, was a wall of flame. I screamed her name, ran into the heat, but the smoke punched me back. I could hear her, faint, coughing, trapped somewhere inside. A neighbor pulled me away before the roof caved in. I don't remember hitting the ground. The next morning, they said Lena was gone. The fire department called it an accident. Faulty wiring. But I knew that wiring. I built it. I checked it twice. It wasn't an accident. Then came the police. The questions. The whispers. Negligence. Insurance fraud. Maybe he did it. My boss, Martin Hale, the man who owned half the town, stood in front of the cameras, shaking his head, pretending to be heartbroken. He told reporters, "It's a tragedy." Ethan was like family. But behind that fake sympathy, his eyes looked calm. Too calm. A week later, my shop was declared unsafe and demolished. My name was printed in the papers as reckless. I lost my job, my house, my fiancé, my future. The town I loved turned its back on me. I remember standing in front of the ashes. My hands were black with soot. The smell of burnt wood and gasoline mixed in the air. And that's when I whispered the wind, "Someone did this and I'll find them." That was the day Ethan Cole died. The man who replaced him was something else. I left town before sunrise. No goodbyes. No explanations. Just an old duffel bag, a half tank of gas, and a heart that wouldn't stop burning. For the next few years, I became no one, slept in cheap motels, worked under fake names, learned things I never imagined I'd need to know. Lockpicking, surveillance, how to read people, how to disappear. Pain can teach you more than any classroom ever will. Every night, I'd fall asleep replaying the fire in my head, the orange light flickering on Lena's face, the sound of her voice fading into smoke. I'd promise her quietly, "I'm not done. Not yet." It took 7 years before I found the first clue. I was working as a night janitor for a logistics company in Denver when I overheard 2 truck drivers talking about Martin Hale, how his company's warehouse had accidentally caught fire once, too. The payout had saved his business. Insurance. That word hit me like a bullet. I started digging. Old records, archived articles, financial filings. And then I found it, a payout record from the same insurance company, just days after Lena's death. Martin's business had received $500,000 in fire compensation. The fire wasn't an accident. It was a setup. That night, I stared at Martin's photo on an old article. He looked older, richer, smugger. I studied every wrinkle, every smirk, and I decided he was going to feel everything I'd felt, but I wouldn't rush it. No, revenge isn't fast food. It's slow-cooked, served cold. I changed my name to Ryan Miles. Got new ID, new clothes, new story. 10 years had passed since the fire. I was no longer Ethan Cole, the mechanic. I was something sharper, colder. It was time to go home. When I drove into town again, it didn't recognize me, and I didn't recognize it. The billboards were new, the people older, But the smell of wet asphalt after rain, that hadn't changed. Martin Hale was everywhere. His campaign posters hung from every lamppost. Martin Hale for mayor, a new future. A new future built on my past. I rented a small apartment 2 streets from his mansion. The walls were thin, the rent cheap, and the landlord didn't ask questions. From there, I started watching. I learned his schedule, his habits. Every morning he jogged around the same park, stopped for coffee at 8:10, and called his assistant at 8:15. I tracked his wife, Clara, a polite woman with sadness in her eyes, and his teenage son, Noah, who reminded me too much of myself before everything burned. For weeks, I didn't move. I just watched, because revenge isn't about striking first. It's about waiting for the perfect moment. When I finally approached him, it was almost laughable how easy it was. His campaign needed a tech consultant, someone to secure online donations and manage data. I walked in with a fake resume and a confident smile. He didn't even recognize me. Martin Hale shook my hand and said, "Welcome aboard, Ryan. I like trustworthy men." Trustworthy. If only he knew. Working for him felt like walking through a graveyard where I'd buried myself. His office smelled like cedar and arrogance. Every word he spoke was polished for cameras. I installed his security systems, monitored his emails, and placed small, invisible bugs behind picture frames and under desks. I wanted to hear everything, and I did. I heard him berate employees, threaten contractors, cheat donors. He talked about money, power, and control, but never about guilt. Not once. One night, after everyone left, I stayed behind. I broke into his private server. Buried deep inside, I found old recordings, insurance papers, and internal emails. But one file stood out. Fire_archive_12. It was encrypted. I cracked it 2 days later. It was a video, a security feed from my old workshop, the night of the fire. A man in a black jacket poured something on the floor, gasoline. He dropped a lighter. The flames spread fast, and then Martin Hale walked in. He stood there, watching. Someone off camera said, "She's still inside." Martin's voice replied, "Cold as ice. Let it burn. We can't afford the risk." My hands shook so hard I nearly dropped the laptop. My lungs felt tight. I could barely breathe. So this was it. The truth. He hadn't just ruined my life. He'd murdered Lena. I stared at his smiling face on his campaign posters the next morning. The whole town loved him. He was untouchable. But not for long. I didn't go to work the next day. I couldn't. I sat in my apartment, watching that video on repeat, my mind a storm of grief and fury. Every time his voice said, "Let it burn," something inside me cracked. I wanted to kill him. Simple as that. But then I saw Noah. The kid looked lost, lonely. The same eyes I once had when I was young and thought the world was fair. I realized something. If I just killed Martin, Noah would grow up believing another monster took his father away. The cycle would repeat. No, I wanted Martin to feel it, to lose everything, to watch his own world burn, slowly. So I planned. I leaked small pieces of dirt to journalists, tiny, believable stories about campaign fund misuse. I sent anonymous tips to his wife's email. exposing his affairs. I accidentally forwarded an internal memo to his opponents. One by one, his allies started turning on him. And every time his life cracked a little more, I whispered to myself, "That's for you, Lena." The perfect man began to fall apart. Martin's campaign stumbled. His finances bled. His wife moved out. His son stopped speaking to him. His name went from respected businessman to possible fraud. And I watched it all. Every headline, every scandal, every sleepless night he had. But revenge has a funny way of twisting back. I started dreaming of the fire again. Sometimes I saw Lena reaching out to me. Sometimes I saw myself standing beside the man with the lighter. I'd wake up sweating, unsure which one of us was a monster now. People at work noticed I was quieter, darker. Even Martin started confiding in me. "Ryan," he said once, pouring himself whiskey, "I think someone's after me." I looked him in the eye and said, "You probably deserve it." He laughed, thinking it was a joke. It wasn't. He found out who I was 3 weeks later. I don't know how. Maybe I slipped, maybe someone talked. But one night, I came home and smelled gasoline. Before I could react, the door slammed behind me. Martin stood there, holding a gun, his face twisted, desperate. "You should have stayed dead, Ethan," he said. He forced me into a van and drove me to the old industrial district, the same warehouse where Lena had died. It was half collapsed, covered in graffiti, but I recognized it instantly. "This is where it ends," he said. I laughed. "You said that 10 years ago." He hit me hard. Blood filled my mouth. Then he threw the lighter onto a puddle of fuel. The flames roared to life. We fought, fists, broken glass, rage. Two ghosts trapped in the same nightmare. I slammed him against a steel beam. He clawed at my throat. At one point, I had his own gun in my hand. I could have ended it right there. But then I saw Lena again. Not the burning version. The real her. Smiling. Gentle. The woman who believed revenge was poison. I lowered the gun. Martin laughed weakly, thinking I'd lost. But as he stumbled, the floor beneath him gave way. Flames crawling up the metal. He screamed once. Then silence. I walked out, the heat biting my back. I didn't kill him. The fire did. Poetic, isn't it? The news called an accident. Local businessman dies in fire during break-in. No one mentioned me. No one ever would. I watched from my car as the firefighters hosed down the ruins. The same scene 10 years later. But this time, I didn't cry. I just drove away. Now I live by a quiet lake, far from that cursed town. The nights are silent here. I sometimes write letters to Lena. Never send them, of course. Just words to the wind. Sometimes I still see her in my dreams. Not burning, not crying, just smiling. And for the first time in 10 years, I can breathe. I spent 10 years chasing justice and found something else instead, a ghost of myself. Sometimes revenge doesn't free you. It chains you. But tonight, as I watch the calm water outside my window, I know Lena would finally forgive me. And maybe I can forgive myself too. Revenge feels like justice when pain blinds you. But a fire, it burns the guilty and the innocent alike. Ethan's story reminds us that true closure doesn't come from destruction, it comes from release. Letting go isn't weakness, it's freedom, because in the end, the greatest revenge is peace.
If this story gave you chills, hit that like button, subscribe, and tell me in the comments, what's the most satisfying revenge you've ever seen play out?